In recent years, the video game industry has grown faster than anyone could have imagined and makes more revenue per year than the film industry, music industry, NBA, NFL, MLB, and NHL combined. Business in the industry is booming, and gaming is at the peak of its popularity. Yet the industry is filled with stories of workforces being cut and employees being exploited. Even in just the past year, Activision Blizzard, the studio behind some of the most iconic games ever made, was investigated for discriminatory work environments and terrible treatment of workers. Despite this, the industry still seems to be resistant towards change and often turns a blind eye to all the wrongdoings that are taking place. Furthermore, the gaming community itself seems to always be portrayed negatively because of issues such as toxicity. So what's actually happening? What's going on behind the scenes of some of the most popular games? Has the industry improved at all? And are things getting better? Keep listening to hear about these topics and more on today's episode of The Rundown.
What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 3 of The Rundown.
I'm Sam.
I'm Will.
Let's get right into it.
Today we're going to be talking about community issues, work environments, major company controversies, and more.
For the last 2 episodes, we focused more on the perspectives of players and indie developers. So today let's start off with the experiences of major gaming company developers.
Yeah, let's talk about job security in video games or in game development.
I guess in the gaming industry or game development industry in general, one of the biggest issues that's seen a lot is people getting laid off and people getting fired out of nowhere and sometimes with no warning at all and no severance pay or anything.
For sure. I mean, it's a very fragile industry and people get, like you said, laid off all the time and there's very little job security.
Yeah, and I think one of the most infamous or most recent examples of this is with Telltale Games, who they were the studio behind the Walking Dead game series and Wolf Among Us and Batman series and a bunch of other things, Minecraft Story Mode too, I think. And basically they were the studio that kind of pioneered and popularized making games that were more kind of like a movie almost, or much more heavily focused on the story part of it than the gameplay, because a lot of times I think it was just cutscenes and you pick dialogue options and make decisions,
but you're mostly there for to be along the ride.
Yeah, the actual gameplay wasn't that fleshed out usually.
Yeah.
But in 2018, I believe it was just one day, all of a sudden they had a meeting with their employees and they just said that all of them were getting laid off. And I believe it was because the studio ended up becoming bankrupt, but there was no warning at all for any of the employees. None of them received any severance pay, and I think all of them had their health insurance was only lasting
to the end of the week, yeah,
another 9 days, yeah. And it was just devastating because it was just out of nowhere. Because before that day, everything seemed normal. They were on course to develop the next game and all that.
And they were told the next day they had to leave within 30 minutes.
I think it was the day of.
The day of?
The day of. They had to just leave within 30 minutes and they weren't given much time at all to do anything.
And I mean, that goes into how, crappy the work environment is for these developers, and they're constantly trying to meet deadlines, and they're always crunching to try to
exactly,
finish.
Because one of the worst issues for the industry as a whole, I think, usually is the hours that a bunch of developers have to work, because like you said, usually leading up to the release of a game where there's a hard deadline, companies start working their employees nonstop for months, overtime nonstop, except they don't get employees don't get paid any overtime pay.
Yeah.
And then a lot of employees have to work 7 days a week for 14 to 16 hours a day. And when they refuse to do that, when they refuse to work overtime, all of a sudden they reviews of their
games go down.
Reviews of their abilities, kind of their personal reviews. Start going down, and they get fired.
And there's really quick turnover in that industry because it's so competitive, and a lot of people want
to get into the game development industry. And like you said, the term for it is called crunch, or the term for
leading up to a release of something.
Yeah, just this period of time where everybody works overtime to try to meet a deadline and work nonstop.
And I believe a survey was done. It was like 95% of game developers have experienced the crunch.
They've had the crunch, yeah, and then like 80% of them said that like they weren't paid for the extra hours that they put in. So it basically shows that like crunch for, especially for like major studios, it's like mandatory if you want to work at them almost.
And crunch has like had a massive effect on people's mental health too.
Both mental and physically, yeah.
I mean, people have said that the crunch has caused PTSD and memory loss,
Yeah,
and
a bunch of mental like health issues, and also just like some have said that they've gotten like ulcers that have made them like cough up blood and like other physical problems too. And like for a bunch of games, especially like free to play games with microtransactions, like League of Legends, Fortnite, Apex Legends, and like more, all these games that are free to play, but they offer like continuous new cosmetics and like new features and new other like optional content. Developers for these games have it even worse because of this like microtransaction model, since they have to continuously like develop and pump out like all this new content. So it's like they're always on crunch. The crunch never stops for these developers.
I think that really shows where the priorities of these major companies lies. It's definitely they're only concerned with making money, and they don't really care about their developers at all, because I mean they don't really give any time off or show any care for their developers that work so hard to build these games.
And it's like the moment you start complaining, you're just getting fired.
I mean, we brought this up in last episode with CD Projekt Red and how they were in such a big time crunch to try to release Cyberpunk.
And I think like something else to note is the fact that like the issue of crunch and the issue of like employees getting laid off a lot, like these are two connected problems, because what usually happens is as a company gets closer and closer to like a hard deadline, they start staffing up and like, you know, they crunch their employees. And then when the game is released finally, and usually when a major company finishes releasing a game, there's like a pretty long period of time where it's just like nothing happens. So they just start laying off all their employees and just like firing them.
Yeah, for sure.
And like you said earlier, the reason they can do this is just because there's like an endless supply of people that are
young
willing
people that want to come and
usually
develop
young
games.
they're like willing to get into the industry and start working. They don't like really know what it's actually like yet.
And a lot of developers experience burnout really quickly because of the long hours and little pay that they get and terrible work conditions.
And I think that's why the usual like career length for a game developer is like 5 years.
I think in the industry, if you have been a developer for more than 5 years, you're referred to as like a veteran.
Yeah, you're like basically a veteran in the industry, which is like 5 years is not a long time
exactly.
at all for like.
I mean, in most other careers, 5 years is like you're still
it's still early, yeah. And I think like there's another big issue that is very common in, especially like the development industry.
And yeah, both sides. I think.
Well, yeah, it's prevalent in both the like developer side and I guess like the general player side is gender discrimination. Because I think males make up about 75% of all developers in the industry, and developer surveys like usually always find that discrimination and sexism are like commonly found like in the game development industry.
Yeah, I think a lot of women have come out saying that they've experienced a lot of gender discrimination and sexism in the workplace.
Yeah, and I think like pretty recently, like there's been like two major game developer companies that have been like hit with like lawsuits or like investigations because of like issues related to that. Because I think in 2018, Riot Games, who like made League of Legends, Valorant, not Warcraft. What else did they make?
Those are the main two.
I think, yeah, League of Legends, Valorant, and I guess like Legends of Runeterra, their card game. But they were slammed with like a class action lawsuit because it was claimed that the company fostered like a sexist work environment. And it was made by like, 2 women employees at Riot Games, I think. And they were able to list like specific examples of what I think a lot of companies call like bro culture. has negatively impacted like the experiences of female employees.
Yeah, I think a lot of the past female employees likened it to working in a frat house, kind of.
Yeah.
And yeah, the bro culture was very prevalent, and they were constantly experiencing discrimination and sexual harassment in the
There's a lot of
workplace.
examples of things like how women are like routinely passed up for like promotions, and then they get like sexual remarks from a lot of their coworkers, and when they complain to the higher ups or like the people that are supposed to be in charge of making sure like that the work environment is
Or HR, yeah.
good. Yeah, basically, they just like ignore it, or sometimes they just tell them that like, oh, it's all a joke, it's fine, it's just like them being nice. I'm pretty sure like some of them have said that. And basically, eventually, what ended up happening, I think, in 2019, was the state of California basically started an investigation on Riot Games for gender discrimination because of like all these stories and like accounts from like people that have worked there, and like basically evidence against their company.
I think
for all this stuff.
Yeah, and a lot of women came out and said that they were passed up, like you were saying before, for promotions for men that had come after they did, and they were told to, quote, wait their turn.
Yeah, and there's been like even other stories that range from things like how some women were like not able to hire other women into leadership positions, or like how some women were like put on a list of pretty employees that like some higher ups in the company wanted to sleep with. Basically, like a bunch of like male higher up employees like just made a list like that, and all this eventually ended up leading to, I think, later in 2019.
It was the walkout, right?
It was a walkout, yeah, and it was like over 150 Riot employees walked out of like the offices in Los Angeles in order to protest the company's stance on forced arbitration, which basically just said that like, or basically it was just like the company was preventing like a judge or like a arbitrator from like seeing and addressing like the full extent of what the company was doing wrong,
and
like basically the
forcing it
situation.
to handle it privately, kind of.
Basically, like they basically like weren't allowing any of them to like talk to other people and like bring attention to what was happening at the company.
I think that was the first walkout in game developer history.
Yeah, it was the first like labor related lockout for at least definitely a large game studio.
And since then, I mean, game developers have showed interest in unionizing.
Yeah, like the people, not like the higher ups in companies have shown interest in like unionizing, because I think something that a lot of the employees have realized is that like games shouldn't be made based off of like, or like based on the foundation of like the employees being like in pain almost. Because I think for a long time, for a lot of companies, I know definitely for like Blizzard or like Riot, they believe that like this like we talked about earlier, like this frat culture,
yeah.
and like bro culture, like that was like necessary for them to create
Good games.
because they have created really good games in these conditions. And I think that they believe that like they couldn't change the work conditions, because of the fact that like somehow like these were the reasons that they were able to make
it's like,
these
oh
good
well,
games.
we made good games in these conditions, so this must be doing something right. But
basically like they didn't want to change anything.
True.
Yeah. And I think so basically like employees have started to cry out for the industry in general to become unionized, and then like companies are against unionizing, because I think, if I remember correct, I don't remember if it was Riot or if it was Activision Blizzard, but basically employees were talking about unionizing in one of those two companies, and basically like the company head like sent out a letter to all of its employees, an email basically like giving reasons to why they shouldn't unionize, and a lot of the reasons were like just made up stuff and kind of just excuses, and they like didn't address any wrongdoings that were happening at the companies. And basically it just shows that like they were desperate for employees not to unionize, because they just didn't want that to happen, because then they start losing like part of it is just they lose power, as dumb as that is to say, kind
over
of
their employees. Yeah,
they like there's limits on what they can do now. They can't just do whatever they want.
I think that ties into what a lot of game studios have done with like just the not addressing the issues and denying everything. I mean, if we want to talk about Blizzard for a little bit here.
Yeah, it was in, I think, 2021, more recent. the state of California, it was state of California again. They sued Activision Blizzard over claims of sexual harassment and discrimination in their like work environment. And I believe it was like after they conducted a 2-year investigation, the state's like Department of Fair Employment and Housing basically said in a lawsuit that like the company fostered again, like we talked about earlier, a frat boy workplace culture that like fostered just like sexism towards its workers.
I know specifically people like on the World of Warcraft team, that was a particularly toxic environment for women, and there were plenty of examples and instances of sexual harassment and discrimination.
Yeah, because I think for these companies, it was these two specific like companies, specifically these examples.
Yeah, like Riot and Blizzard.
Like female employees were like subjected to like constant sexual like harassment and like having to like continually like fend off unwanted like sexual remarks and like advances from coworkers, and like that like male coworkers oftentimes like openly joke, well, it was male coworkers and like supervisors, people that are higher up, openly joked about things like rape and like commonly like drank alcohol in the middle of the day while working. And they would engage in like inappropriate behavior toward women at their like workplace stations, like their cubicles, during events that they like called like cube crawls, where they just kind of like went around to like these cubicles, started like harassing the women employees.
Yeah. And I mean, there was one extreme instance which I think kind of led to the investigation starting, which was when they were on a woman and her male supervisor were on
they were in a relationship.
They were like on a trip together, and he kept making unwanted sexual advances on her, and she ended up
I think what might have happened
suicide.
I think what might have happened was they were in a relationship, and then the relationship like got broke off or something, and then basically I think the male colleagues started like sharing around, allegedly like sharing around like explicit photos of her and like things like that, and that ended up leading to her taking her life. I think that was one of the big things that like sparked the whole like investigation, and also, well, I guess just like a big demand for like something to actually get done, because before that all the employees were saying,
a lot of people knew about it,
like people knew about it and people wanted things to be done about it, but like usually they were able to, the people that were like higher up that were doing these things were able to just like get away with it. Because I think for both Riot and Activision Blizzard, a lot of the people that were involved with like these wrongdoings, like committing these wrongdoings, were like really high up in the company, and they like still worked there for a very long time and like still remain in their position.
Like nothing was really done. Like these people were reported for doing these things, and received like, very little punishment.
They just either like denied it and nothing happened, or they like very, very little amounts of punishment, and they were welcomed back.
Yeah, like I think the COO at
the CEO Riot,
got suspended for like 2 months after sexually assaulting an employee.
And like the CEO, I think it was, of Activision Blizzard, for a very long time had a lot of allegations towards them, and like for a very long time nothing happened. And I think eventually, after being pressured by the internet like a lot, and like by even some, I think it got to a point where some like shareholders of Blizzard were threatening to like pull out if like the CEO didn't resign from his spot. And like it just shows that like it took so much for like someone to finally be punished and like step down. And even then he wasn't punished. He willingly resigned. I think he stepped down.
He was not fired.
He wasn't fired. Yeah, it just shows like it's pretty crazy how much they can get away with in the current like work environments.
Thankfully, since a lot of this has started to come out, more women have come out and shared their stories and troubles in the industry.
It's definitely gotten better. It's starting from a very low point, but like, it's getting better
slowly but surely. Yeah. I think that Blizzard is starting to hire some new staff and are keeping a closer eye on all these problems.
Yeah, and I think for the most part, like especially like we mentioned earlier, like unionizing, if that happens, it should be in general a benefit for the industry.
But I mean, it is still a massive problem, and a lot of these people who have allegations against them remain in their positions of power.
Yeah, there's only been like a few that have like been forced to
leave. Those are the worst ones. I mean, there's still plenty of
those are
bad,
like the worst offenders.
Yeah, there are plenty of bad ones still out there.
Yeah, and I think if we shift away a little bit from the developer side and we go back to the player side, because one of the other biggest issues, or one of the biggest issues too, for like general gaming community is toxicity.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, the gender discrimination doesn't just happen in the workplace; it happens online too for lots of female players of games.
Yeah, because like large majority of female players will have experienced like a lot of like sexual harassment online almost, and like many other things.
I mean, I think I've witnessed it firsthand. It's horrible.
It's pretty common.
Yeah, it is very common, and a lot of women who play games generally don't use voice chat or mute themselves or don't talk in the game because
there's a lot of like almost like fear because of like this I guess culture
toxicity
almost. Because like obviously it doesn't represent like the entire gaming community, because at least in my maybe I'm wrong because like I don't have the perspective, but at least from my opinion that like
there are lots of good communities
there are a lot of good communities out there, and I think the majority of people in the community are like welcoming and really nice to everyone. It's just the fact that like the loudest people are the people that are like discriminatory and like saying all these like offensive remarks.
It's a very loud minority.
Yeah, and I would probably say that obviously isn't like a very small minority. It's still like a really big chunk of the community. It's just like I don't think it's a majority. And again, maybe I'm wrong about that.
Yeah.
And I think even past like gender toxicity, I guess. It's just like there's just general toxicity, because toxicity just basically means like it can mean like a lot of things. I don't really think there's like a specific definition for it in gaming, because it could be something like just like saying insults nonstop, or saying like offensive things nonstop, or it could be like things like willingly losing a game for your team because like you don't like someone on your team or something, or like a bunch of other things. Like all of these things are like encompassed in toxicity.
Yeah, a lot of people I think feel that they can say and do whatever they want online because of that like anonymity they have.
It's like the same for like general internet use. It's not just like for video games, since it's like all over the internet and you're like anonymous. Like you said, people start having like a power trip.
Yeah, exactly, and they start like being racist or sexist and stuff when they might not say those things in real life.
Yeah, I can guarantee you, like majority of the people in person will just be super quiet and don't say anything and just be nice.
But then the second they're anonymous and hiding behind a username, they can say they feel like they can say whatever they want. Yeah.
And I know, and like, there's a lot of games, and almost exclusively it's multiplayer games because like you're playing.
That's
with other
where
people.
You're meeting other people.
Yeah, for a lot of multiplayer games, like they're notorious for being like super toxic. Because I can think of like games like League of Legends or like Overwatch at its prime, because I think it's gotten better now, and like a bunch of other games. Because like for League of Legends specifically, I don't know if it's 100% true, but I've heard that like different regions have different servers, and like the servers for Korea is like one of the worst like servers like in general, I guess, in terms of toxicity. Because I know there's been a lot of players that from like North America and like other regions, like popular streamers basically. Something that like a lot of them do is they go to Korea and try to like grind and try to climb the competitive rank there, because like it's
way more competitive there.
Korea is like the number one region.
People take it a lot more seriously in Korea.
Yeah, and basically like they try to become like number one or really high ranked in the Korean servers to kind of like prove their skill or improve. And a lot of them have like had to stop their, I don't want to say journey because that's kind of like not the right word, but they stop like their I guess experience in Korea like early, because they literally start having like mental health issues because of like playing in the environment. Yeah. And I think something that's really common in like a really common mindset in Korea, more than in other regions, because it also exists in like other games in other regions, is just a mindset that like I am better than you. I know I'm better than you.
Mhm.
I quote
We've
unquote,
talked about
I
this
know I'm
before.
better than
Yeah.
you. And it's fine if I lose this game. I like there will be,
I can throw this game.
like, I can throw this game
because I know I
I'll
can get it
climb
back.
eventually.
Mhm.
But you won't climb because you're worse than me. So I'll just throw this game.
Mhm.
Okay, and basically what this means, something that happens a lot in Korean servers is like League of Legends games are usually like on average like 30 minutes at least,
Mhm.
and they're pretty long and they're pretty unpredictable. Less so in the higher ranks, I guess, because they can take a small advantage and like end up winning. But basically, what happens is if like within the first few minutes someone makes a mistake or something, a teammate might just like give up and throw the entire game and just like make you lose just like that instantly. It could be like one tiny mistake you like, and like not even necessarily like you died and the enemy got a kill. It might not even be something big like that.
It might be like not a game-ending mistake.
It could be the smallest mistake ever where you can still like easily come back from and win, but they're just like, it's not worth it. It's not worth my time.
Mhm.
And
they'll keep you hostage in the game. For
they
40 minutes.
They just like throw the game, make you lose within like the first 10 minutes. That's possible, and then just queue up again, play the next game. That's like the mindset there almost, and that's like a super toxic environment to, especially for like people that are training to be pros almost, or like people that like play the game a lot every day, not just for fun.
Yeah,
because there are some like that
for sure. Do we want to shift over to games we know have better communities?
Yeah, because let's end this on a positive note, because something else, or like I said earlier, I believe that like there are definitely a lot of examples.
I think the majority of gamers are more.
I think so.
Like
too.
I think there are more good people than there are bad people in gaming.
Yeah, because like, actually, there's something I want to talk about. I think because something I experienced was I can kind of it doesn't fit exactly with this. I don't know if I've told you about this, but when I traveled to China.
Oh yeah, you did tell me about.
Okay, yeah, when I traveled to China a few years ago, I think I played in like the Chinese League of Legends servers, and at one point I met someone, like a random player that spoke like English, and basically I ended up like adding him and played some games with him because like we both spoke English. Like I also spoke Chinese. I could also speak Chinese fine. It was just like, oh, it's an English speaker playing on Chinese servers. Like this could be fun.
Yeah.
And basically after like a few games, all of a sudden he just started like spouting out like the most racist remarks and like things into like the all chat in English.
Yeah.
Because like, oh, I have power. They don't understand. I can say whatever. And like I was seeing that, and like I ended up blocking him, removing him as a friend, and just like never blocking him, reporting him, and everything. Like I guess that's kind of an example of like how like anything can happen in like video games and like over the internet in general. Like people have like these power trips. Yeah. And they start like being like that's toxicity.
That's like
that's
textbook toxicity.
That's textbook. That's like a pretty straightforward example.
Yeah, I do want to end the episode on a good note.
Yeah, so like
let's talk about games that we know have really good communities. And
I think for me, a game that I've played that I've like quite a few hours, probably around like 20 to 30 hours. So it's not a lot, but it's like a decent amount. And I don't think I've experienced like a single negative thing yet. Is Squad, which basically it's a super large scale military sim game, where basically it just simulates like a military battle
like environment.
Yeah, it's like a super super big environment. Things are really realistic, and then like it's like, and the whole thing is, like I said, it's really realistic. Like there's like, you're split up into squads, you have squad leaders, and you're like a commander, and like two sides versing each other. It's like two countries usually versing each other, and like matches can be like up to like 2 hours long, almost, because it's like the whole point is like a realism. And I think because it's such a like a niche genre, I guess, or like a very like for a very specific audience, not everybody likes these kind of games because they're kind of boring, or they can be kind of boring. The people that do play it a lot and are like dedicated fans are like the people that, like the leftover people are the nice ones, and like the people that just want to have a good time.
Like, they're like welcoming to new players.
Yeah, exactly. Like the entire community, from what I've experienced, is like super welcoming to new players that don't know what's happening yet, because it's pretty hard to like start getting into things and understanding what's happening since it's so like realistic. And like so I think like that's a pretty good example of a community that's just like really welcoming and really nice, and like generally really not toxic at all.
Yeah. I mean, I'm no League of Legends player, but from what I have played, it is difficult to get into it as a new player.
Oh yeah, that's something we can talk about, because we
there's
didn't
like
really
a
mention it earlier.
really high barrier of entry.
I think for a lot of games in general, from what I've noticed and like from what my beliefs are, is just that like I think something we have talked about before is the fact that like okay, before I talk about this, I guess I should like talk about a term that is used a lot in gaming. So Smurfing.
Oh my god. Yeah.
Smurfing is a term used for when like someone really high
level or
is
high
it
rank.
high rank?
High rank.
I don't know. Okay, I think high rank might not necessarily. Just someone with a lot of experience playing a game, a multiplayer game, ends up making like a new account and starting from scratch and
like kind of pretending to be
a new player and playing against like new players or lower skilled
Lower
players,
ranked, yeah.
so that they can like purposely dominate in games and like just start like ruining the experience for a lot of people. And basically what happens is Smurfing has been like a really big problem for a lot of games.
Yeah.
Where at least it's really common.
Rainbow and Overwatch are really bad for Smurfs.
Yeah, and like it's gotten to the point where like because of this commonly found thing, it's gotten to the point where like people, when they see a low level player, they don't believe that it's like an actual low level player. They think that every single person who plays the game that is low level is a Smurf.
Yeah.
And like as a result of this, what happens a lot is like new players that are trying to get into a game just like get insulted like nonstop and get like flamed nonstop in games. And like it does not help at all trying to like, especially when you're getting like a new friend or something to like try like a video game and try to get them like into it and see if they like it. It doesn't help at all when like they make one tiny mistake because they haven't played games that often, and all of a sudden like everyone on the team is just like telling them to end their life.
Yeah.
Or like ask like, oh my god, you're so bad, what's happening,
what's going on,
why are you throwing the game, oh my god. And like this happens in like like the casual game modes where it's like not ranked, like it could be like literally unranked, just what's meant for a casual experience, and then like this stuff happens.
Yeah, I mean, I've had that first-hand experience in League of Legends. Where
exactly. That's why I started talking about.
I have no idea what's going on, and I'm just trying to learn the game.
Like, especially for a game like League of Legends, it's a super high like
barrier of entry.
Yeah, that's the right term.
Really steep.
Like it's really
skill.
hard. It's a really big learning curve.
Yeah, learning curve. Yeah.
And it's like it takes a long time before you start getting into it and start like having fun with it, because you like know what's happening. Until you get to the point where you know generally know what's happening, the game is just not fun.
Yeah, it took me. I mean, even now I feel like
you're not at the point.
I don't really feel like I know what's going on.
You don't have to lie. I don't think you like the game.
But yeah, that definitely made the game not fun at all for a long time when I was first starting to play.
Yeah, so like I guess that connects with like when I was talking about Squad, how the community is a lot more welcoming to new players.
Yeah.
And like
I don't know what that community like vibe is. I don't really understand that whole mindset of like, oh, you're a new player, I don't want you to be here.
Oh yeah, that's a very common mindset.
Yeah, game like a lot of players don't like new players coming to the game. Yeah. And I don't understand why.
To be fair, it depends on the situation, because like if you're playing ranked and you're pretty high ranked, and you get a new player somehow, because that happens sometimes. When you're not like super high ranked, but you're like above average, you get a new player in your team and you end up losing because of it, because they don't know what's happening and they just
that's frustrating. I understand.
Like that's frustrating, and like you still shouldn't take it out on them, but like that's more understanding. But this happens in like unranked games or like casual game modes. That's the thing.
Where it's like I feel like if you like a game, you should want it to grow.
You want to help.
And
you
want more
to help people. You would expect that, but
a lot of people don't have that mindset. But yeah, Squad seems like it has a really welcoming community. I want to talk about Warframe for a little bit, which I have more hours in that game than I'd care to disclose.
Another example of those.
Another one of those games. But most of the experiences I've had with other people, Warframe doesn't have a voice chat, so it's all over text.
Yeah.
But almost every experience I've had with the community in Warframe has been super welcoming. Everyone's always so nice, and it really feels like every player wants the game to grow and wants it to reach a wider audience. And they're more than happy to help new players all the time.
Yeah. And I might be wrong, but I feel like that also is because similar to Squad, it's like a pretty targeted specific like targeted demographic
Yeah,
that enjoys
yeah,
the
for
game.
sure.
It's like another like niche game.
It's
like, only
not,
some
yeah,
people
it's
like.
not super. I mean,
Like,
it's
not,
like the most popular free game.
Yeah, it's
or
not
one of the most
obviously
popular.
not as much as like Squad is, but it's like
But yeah, not a whole lot of people take it very seriously.
Yeah.
At all. Like a lot of people will download it and play it for a few hours,
That's
and then
me.
and then like forget about it.
That's me.
So the player base that actually plays a lot and is really dedicated is pretty small,
Yeah.
and they want that community to grow more. But yeah, I've been a part of like a few like clans in Warframe, which is like the kind of like it's a big group that helps you progress in the game faster and like gives you access to new items
Yeah.
and stuff.
It's just helping each other out.
It's just a community to help each other out, yeah. And I've been a part of a few of those, and everyone has been so nice in those and very helpful and down to do whatever. But yeah, which is a breath of fresh air from
I
the
think
multiplayer competitive games.
Yeah, it's I think especially I guess in general it's usually like the really really big and really really popular games that have like the most toxic communities, obviously because there's so many people. So, but like yeah, there's definitely examples of usually smaller communities that are just like nice across the board almost, where they're just like welcoming to everybody because they want to grow.
Yeah,
I guess
for sure.
that's a pretty common like characteristic, I guess, of like nice communities. So they're usually smaller and they want to start growing.
All right.
Is that everything?
I think that's pretty much everything, yeah?
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you for listening to The Rundown. We'll see you in the next
Episode
episode.
3. Yep. Hopefully we're going to have another special guest next episode.